Okay, so my presentation is called "I'm a Grant Writer, Don't Chase Grants," and that's kind of, I know it's kind of wacky. I'm kind of figuring out why would I say that, because I make my money off grants, right? But there's a whole separate category of it that I wanted to hit up with people. First of all, let me tell you about you, because whenever you do this stuff, you got to tell about why do I know this stuff? Why am I an expert, kind of thing. Well, first I graduated with a psychology major from UC San Diego. I attended Harvard Business School, got a nonprofit management certificate. Um, I was the CEO of two rural boys and girls clubs. We had huge growth, 570% budget growth. So we went from about 400,000 total to about 3.5 million. We increased with 1,600 kids. Sites, 1,600%. So we went from 4 sites to about 40 sites. And then we had membership growth of almost 1,600. So it was really good. I've been awarded over $20 million in grants, and I've written federal grants, local grants, state grants, all different kinds of grants. And I've raised an additional 5 million in events and peer-to-peer and corporate campaigns. And the people in the lower left, that's my wife, my kid. That's the reason why I do it. My wife is 27 years. My 18-year-old just went to college. So that's where we are with that. And I'm going to give you an inspiring, true story about, I have those popping through, and I don't know how inspirational it's going to be, but stories about where we were. One of the things you got to remember when you're a rural club is you do everything yourself. And I realized this when I got a call from a good friend of mine who ran the Boys and Girls Club of Austin, Texas. Big city, $6 million budget, that kind of thing. She called me up and she said, "Bryan, who do you use for your videography? How much do you pay them?" I go, "What? Videography? I use an iPhone." Because when you do the rural clubs, and one of the reasons why, and this is going into why I feel I've been successful, is because you have to learn how to do it yourself. I was the CEO, and I was the grant writer, and I was the janitor, and I taught some classes when people didn't show up. I mean, you do a lot of everything when you're in that situation. So as a result, that's where I came from. So the second thing is, don't chase grants. And why would I do it? And part of my subtitle is, applying to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is not an RD strategy. I've had people who've done that. I'll explain in a moment. In fact, I'm going to go through this as if it were a The Price is Right. I mean, The Price is Right. Family Feud. Top 6 answers on the board for this question. Give me reasons why grants might not be the best option for your organization. Well, we'll start off, and I had a few up there. But first of all, that I want everybody to know is grants are subjective. I've been a grant scorer, and not all grants are scored with a matrix. You can't say, "Oh, I've got this and this and this and this, so I'm going to get it." Grants are not, they're subjective. Humans are humans. And let me explain what I'm saying on that. If I'm going in to score a grant for you, and right before I get to your grant, which is a really well-written grant, which is a really awesome, everything is on top of it, and I spill coffee on myself. Shit, gotta get up and I'm reading the super. Do you think my human emotion is going to allow that grant to be read subjectively? No, probably not. So you got to keep that in mind. And where I'm going with this is, when you run into board members and people who go, "Oh, just write a grant," it's not like that. Second part, what is your grant review process going to look like if I'm coming in and I'm in a fight with my wife, or my kid does not have a good day going off to school, or anything like that? What do you do in those cases? You're not going to come in. You're not going to be rational. You might not be thinking too much about the grant. You might skip over some key parts. So my thing is you just got to remember that humans are humans. Grants are subjective. Human emotion gets involved in it. So that's the number one answer, in my opinion, and why you don't, on where you want to go with that. Number two, foundations can pivot. Now, what's going to pop up on the screen is the actual definition from the IRS of anything foundations can do. You got to give away a certain number. You got to have an EIN. You got to have it at 5% has to be given away. You have to go to IRS guidelines. You have to fit and you do annual tax returns, but nowhere does it say you must maintain the same vision. You must maintain your same charitable. You have to give 5% away of your holdings to maintain your tax exempt status as a foundation. Now, what does that mean? And here's you see my little icon for inspiring true life stories. This actually happened to us. My club, we were doing great stuff. You saw my numbers earlier. We were jamming on it, right? We were crushing. We had tons of people, helping tons of kids, tons of families. Everything was going great. We had this foundation in the area kind of that gave us about $90,000 a year and consistently. We did everything, even if we did great, 90,000. If we did a little bit less than 90,000, we always got 90,000. One year we get it, the check shows up like it usually does, and it's 15,000. I was like, so I called up the director, which of course I knew, and I said, what exactly happened? Did we do something wrong? We didn't have any scandals, nothing like that. What's the story? And as it ended up, they're like, no, you guys, your organization, we were Boys and Girls Club, you got this thing down with youth development, with kids. The kids are taken care of. And we found out there's other foundations that can cover that. We're going to switch to homelessness because there's a big homeless population growing in our community. So as a result, I was just out. And it wasn't like that we didn't do anything wrong. There was nothing, there's nothing that we could say or do. Their board decided to change, to pivot. And so we had to accept that. Oops, my thing left. There's my PowerPoint. Disappeared on me for a second there. So that's something you got to remember. Grants are not guaranteed. Grants are subjective. Foundations can change their direction. Now, we all know this. Now, this is not a political statement. Excuse me. Got to have coffee. Delicious. Grants are competitive. And this is not, oh, Trump this and the government that and any of that. That's not where I'm going with this. It's a matter of a lot more people want to get grants. So that's important that you keep that in mind. According to the Grant Professional Association, a grant writer having a 30% success rate is good. That means a good grant writer is failing 70% of the time. And I'm going to address that in just a second. But what it really means is there's a lot more people going after a finite number of grants. I mean, we have more people, in fact. So let's also do the math. Each year, the United States, 120,000 new nonprofits are started. So again, here's the math, just so you can consider it. 120,000, and that's, by the way, that's not a percentage sign turned on its side, I promise. It's a divided by sign. 120,000 a year new profits divided by 365 days means there are 328 new nonprofits per day competing for the same money that you are. And why is your nonprofit better than theirs? See what I'm saying? I mean, that's not a diss. I'm not knocking what you're doing, but everybody, whether you're doing animal control and animal shelter stuff, whether you're doing Boys and Girls Club or youth development, whether you're doing feeding, whether you're doing domestic violence, whether you're helping patients with diseases like cancer, everybody's worthy. Everybody's worthy. Everybody's doing something. So it doesn't come down to your heart. It comes down to your brain. When you're grading these grants, your mission is as good as my mission. Your cause is as good as my cause. But now, who's going to be the more viable business? Because one thing that everybody always forgets is 501c3 is just a tax status. There's nothing else to it. Your tax status. That's it. You're still business first. You're a small business. And if you don't stay in business, you don't show results, you're not going to do anything to help your cause in the long run. So you've got to be strategic thinking when you go after these. But grants are competitive. There are a lot of people going in. Now let's talk real quickly about success rate. This is my side tangent. I think success rate is a garbage number. So I mean, it's good to have it, but it doesn't tell you anything. Because as a lot of you guys probably know, because you guys are all grant writers, remember the previous slide, a foundation has to give away at least 5% of their holdings every year to remain a foundation, right? If they don't, they risk not being a foundation, losing that tax shelter and all that kind of stuff as well. Oh, and helping the world. But the other thing you got to remember is at the end of the year, and I've done this before, a lot of foundations, if they haven't met that threshold, they got to start giving some money away. So I would spam out to a bunch of foundations that would be, I mean, obviously they're within our range. I mean, I'm not going to go to an animal shelter foundation and do a boys and girls club thing. You know, those don't match. That's not smart. But if I found anything that was close to kids, they do. Somebody does something about education. Boys and girls club does that. Somebody that does a granting for mentoring, we do that. Somebody that does something granting for STEM, we did that. Somebody that does food instability for kids, we did that. So you know what I mean? So I would just take a chance at that. And if you look at my overall success rate, mine's probably pretty low when you consider that I'm trying to take advantage of that situation at the end of the year. And, you know, with the whole, by the way, if you haven't given away enough money yet, we're really good. We want to be on your radar. Hello, nice to meet you. Something like that. So in that situation, it's important to realize that, I mean, it's good to have a good success rate. Sure, you don't want to have 3% success rate, but that number can be very misleading. So you got to keep that in mind before you look at good or bad. You know, I mean, are your customers grant ready? And I'm going to talk about that a little bit because I had customers who were not close to grant ready, and they fired me because I didn't get any grants for them. But that's a whole other story. Let's go next. Board grants make a board lazy. Now, this is going to go to my next slide, which talks a little bit about understanding some things. But boards, what are the main functions of the board? Three main ones. I mean, for most, you're the vision for the organization. You have CEO oversight, just the CEO, not the staff, and you fund the organization. The board raises money. That's their job. They raise the money. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, it's incumbent upon my board to make sure things keep rolling financially, so the staff gets paid, so the programs get run, and all that kind of stuff. Now, on a quick side note, what are people's top 3 fears in general? Feel free to type some in if you have any thoughts. In order: arachnophobia, fear of spiders. Okay, hon, we did get a chat there. Let's see what we got. Oh yeah, Paula, I'll get on that. I use Candid. Candid is a program I use to write all my grants to get all the data. It has it. It's just not as robust. It doesn't have as cool stuff as Candid does. I mean, as Instrumental does. But people's 3 top fears: spiders, arachnophobia. My slide is not moving. There you go. Heights, acrophobia, and fear of public speaking, glossophobia. Board members would rather not go talk to people. They like being on the board and they like doing stuff, but the less that they have to do where money is concerned, they don't want to ask people for money. Nobody likes asking. I mean, I'll be the first to tell you, I had to learn how to do it. Nobody likes asking for money. So in that regard, you can understand that the board might not want to ask people for money. So grants are the way to go. I'm going to just write some grants. But you've got to remember, this has got to be sucked into the brains of the board. Is the love for your mission has to be greater than your fear of the ask. It's not scary. I mean, what's the worst somebody could do? Say no? Okay, no. You said no. That's it. It's not that big a deal for anybody to if they get denied, if they it's that whole Michael Jordan thing that if you don't ask, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So you got to get them to ask. Here is a reel. One of those. I love that icon, by the way, because it's so inspirational. I hope I'm being inspirational. So at one time I wrote a 21st century grant in the state of Texas. It was the largest grant ever awarded, $12.5 million. So it's a huge grant. It's a 5-year grant. So we got, I think it was 2.5 a year, for 5 years. So we're like living large. A lot of our supplies were bought. What ended up happening was when we got to our golf tournament, when we got to our peer-to-peer campaign, the board was like, we'll get it next year. We'll get it next year. Because, we got all this 1.1, which was a great boost for our budget. But it was a continuation and the continuation and the continuation of next year became next year, became next year, became, oh my gosh, we're at the end of the grant. And we were actually, when we got through with the end of that grant, we were struggling. We didn't have enough money to do what we wanted to or what we've been doing because of this grant. And the board was like, yeah, but we got the 21st century grant. We're all good, right? No, we're not. We had to actually dip into reserves. We had an endowment. We had to dip into the endowment a little bit to shore things up, and they got their stuff together. But they should have been. The board was like, yeah, we got it. It gives them a false sense of security. And then, by the way, one other thing I'll tell you when you get something like that, just on a practical experience note, when we got the 21st century grant and we were like living large and we're serving more kids and we're doing all this great stuff, one of the other things you can do to attract people is you can up the salary. Now, at the time, my partner, this is when, I don't know, 15, 18, 20 years ago, my staff was making like $9 an hour. That's solid. They're pretty well paid. We upped all them. And again, this is back a long time ago before everybody was making more money and all that, part-time. We would up them up to like $18 to $20 an hour. And our lead people would be getting like 25 an hour. Now, keep in mind, this is rural East Texas. This is where you can buy a 5,000 square, and this is not a lie, a 5,000 square foot house for $200,000. Cost of living is very, very low. So when you're making $9 an hour, again, and 15 years ago or so, that was good money. So $25 an hour is massive. When we got to the end of the grant, and I kept telling all my employees this, we're not going to be able to maintain $25 an hour for grants. We're not. So as a result, we ended up losing a lot of employees. These employees just said, "No, well, I can't. I'm used to making, like $1 billion an hour." And so we kind of got screwed. I mean, we were in a tough situation because we lost a lot of employees and we didn't have ratios to be safe with kids and stuff like that. So, think about that. But the board is when you go after grants, one of the things that happens is, and if you get them, if you're successful, grants will make your board lazy. The term grants becomes a crutch. Oh my gosh. How $1? Okay, so read my point. My thing there is people in general, board specifically, don't understand the work that goes into a grant for beginning 10. $1 for every time people just said, write me a grant. Write me a grant. Write me a grant. That's all they say. So as a result, nobody goes anywhere. They don't understand what it takes, the time, if you're eligible. I mean, here's the realistic process of grant writing. This is my grant writing map. So first you do your search. So you look for grants that are kind of based on your mission or your project. That's it. And you get the general grants. That's a few days. Then you do for 1 week or so, you do the deep research. When's it due? How much do they give? What's their average gift? Do you qualify in your area? Is it one of those, they only give to specific organizations? Do you need an LOI? You have to put it on paper, or do they have a portal? Because surprisingly, there's still a lot of places with paper. Then you have to do the prep stuff for up to a month. I mean, and this one frustrates the fool out of me. But it's, are you prepared for this grant? Are you ready for this grant? Are your financials updated? Have you done your 990? I mean, I had somebody who wrote a grant, had great numbers and everything. They're like, oh, I haven't turned in a 990 yet. Every grant requires a 990. Do you have a list of your board, simple stuff? Do you need a resolution for the board to say they'll take it? Do you have the means to accept that grant? Because I will tell you this too. That previous grant that I told you about that I got, the 21st century one, the huge one, the data that was required for that grant was astounding. I had to hire somebody at about $50,000 to be just my data person, because when you deal with, any of you who've done grants before with governmental agencies know that it's not an easy thing. You have to tell the numbers. And so here's what we had to end up doing. And this is, by the way, Now there are more tracking systems and stuff like that. So, but again, take yourself back 15 years when everything was still on paper for us, and we had to go through the paper and be like, how many 5-year-olds? Of the 5-year-olds you serve, how many are male, how many are female? Of the 5-year-old males, how many are black, how many are white, how many are Latino, how many are Asian? Of the 5-year-old girls, how many are black, how many white, how many Latino, how many Asian? All you had to do all of that, and it became a little bit of insanity, doing it and doing it and doing it. So we had to get a person to keep track. How many days did they attend? How did their grades go up? We didn't have that process in place. So you got to do the prep work, and that takes a long time getting everything ready. And sometimes it's something that it's not dependent upon the grant writer. There's sometimes you've got to get the board to do the resolution. You've got to get the board chair to sign off on the financials. You've got to get them to do a good budget. Again, we'll talk about that in a minute. Then, of course, you write it. And depending on who you're writing to or what you're trying to write and doing the narratives and doing the needs statement and everything like that, it can take up to a couple of months to write it. So, and you want to write the grant and get it ready for somebody who's not like you to read it so they understand what they're saying. In fact, it's always my belief that I try to write like I'm writing to 10 to 12-year-olds. And I don't mean that in the sense of they're less smart or anything like that. What I mean is I want them to be able to understand it. I don't want to use the acronyms, all the Boys and Girls Club acronyms that I have, and OJP and BGCA and NOI and all that kind of stuff. So you've got to write to them so they understand it. And of course, proofreading, because we get too relying on Microsoft Word to do the proofreading and the spelling and the grammar and all that. But you still want a human to read it over and check that. Then you submit it. And if you've heard the phrase in the military, my father-in-law was a military veteran buried in Arlington National Cemetery. They say hurry up and wait, and you got to wait. And sometimes you've got to sit and if you notice my little Simpsons Tom Petty in the lower left corner, the waiting's the hardest part. When are we going to get this money, Brian? When are we going to get this money, Brian? When are we going to get this money, Brian? I don't know. They're foundational grants. Sometimes they meet quarterly. Sometimes they meet monthly. Sometimes they meet once a year. You're just turning it in, and you're at their whim. In fact, I'm writing grants. When I did this slide, I was writing grants in May when I first made this presentation for grants that the foundations don't even meet until October. Like October, so that we still have another 2 weeks before my grant that I wrote in May is going to be read by anybody. So you got to keep that. But then that goes back to, if you look back on what we were saying in the slides, just write a grant for it. That they don't get that concept behind it. And you got to remember that grants are the long game. That's why I don't like grants, because people always come to me like, oh shoot, I need money fast. Well, it's not grants. Grants aren't quick. Grants aren't easy money. It's one of those things that you need to concentrate on. You need to explain. You need to tell your board, because if you look on the slide, this is the perception of the board. I mean, it's very generalized, but hey, we need a new playground. Brian, you write a grant, get the money by this Friday. Kids will be playing on it by Monday. No, we got to see if we even get it. We got to see if we qualify. Is there a match? It's not that simple. Yeah, there you go. It's May 6th. So it's 5 months off. Grants are not immediate. And that's one of the things that you as a grant writer, you've got to make perfectly clear to your customers, to your board and stuff. So here's an example on the grant. This is my grant journey map. I'm applying to the I Love Kids Foundation. I made it up. The grant is due on April 30th, let's just say. And we want $10,000 for a new playground so we can use it during the summer. Well, on March 1st, I'm going to write the grant. A couple days before it's due on the 28th, I'm going to submit it, call them up and make sure that we're going to get it. And notice my little quote, just write the grant. Okay, hold on. Can you guys hold on give me half a second? Let me see what we got. Somebody is just part of the problem of being the main person is let me move people over. I apologize. They're just having a problem in another room. So okay, I think I got it fixed. Apologize for that. That's one of the problems of being the organizer, I guess. So then we get to April and May, and then the foundation will get the application. But don't forget, they're not getting just yours. They're getting all the applications. They're getting stacks of applications. Then the grant secretary, he or she has to take that stack and make sure there's a copy and access for every single board member to read. Or if they use a scoring matrix with other people, like a scoring team, you got that there. So they have to get those out. Then the scorers, board members, have to review all the applications and rank them. Then they build a case for the ones they like. So remember, I told you the very first slide, it's a human, it's subjective, it's a human option that the scorers will then pick their favorites. Oh, I really like this one because they're really trying hard. I know they're smaller, but so you're making your arguments. Then you go to the board meeting and make your arguments. That's before the May meeting. Then after the meeting, the grant secretary will inform everybody who's funded. Then they'll inform everybody who isn't funded. Then the checks are mailed within 30 days. So that process, the check will come in around July 4th. So you're talking about grants. A, they're not guaranteed. B, if you didn't have a quorum, by the way, it gets delayed. So, and there's a reason, by the way, why they do grants a lot in, they give the grants away in May and in end of October, early November. It's because they can't get a quorum because of Christmas and summer break. I'm going to take my kid. I'm on this board, but I'm taking my kids to Disney World, and I got to get going. And so I can't be there for that meeting. Sorry. So they don't have a quorum, so they have to wait. I had that happen to me actually on a FEMA grant that they said we just don't have enough people right now. So I was pushed off for 6 months. So you're at their whims. But the reality of it is you got to remember, it conservatively, realistically, 5 months is what it takes. In our example here on the grant journey map, the playground is the programming is lost. You're not going to do summer playground. You're not going to have that done. You should always take your grants and focus on your wants, not your needs. If we need a playground, you start forever, and we'll count. We'll hopefully get that playground for next summer, not this summer. That's the important thing that people need to remember. It's again, grants are not immediate. Grants are the long game. So what should you do? What should be your process, at least in my opinion? First, do what you're doing. Fulfill your mission. Serve the kids. Be visible in your community. Change the world and produce results. Because results are very important. Because those are what show everybody why they should give to you. We're serving more kids. We're saving more dogs from getting put to sleep. We're Habitat for Humanity. We're building more houses. We're getting less people off the streets. We're feeding this many thousands of people. Keep doing what you're doing. Business first. So your business. Run your business the way you know how to run your business. And keep it first. Second, make sure your nonprofit is ready to apply for grants. That's super important. I'll tell you about that on the next grant on what I'm talking about. But third is create a resource development plan. Again, grants are complimentary. Don't figure out how you're going to raise the money. Let's say you didn't get any grants. How are you going to get money? Real story. Woo, this one is awesome. So I had a lady here in Dallas call me up. She started a nonprofit. This is honestly got truth. About 2 weeks ago, that's what she said. About 2 weeks ago, and she wanted to buy an abandoned hotel. Now it wasn't like haunted abandoned. It was like a Holiday Inn that lost its charter. It's a its sponsorship with Holiday Inn. They didn't pay the fees or whatever. So it was just sitting there vacant. It was in pretty good shape. It's about 100 rooms, something like that. And she was going to do it, make it a women's home to make sure that women who were coming off of rehabilitation, because when you have rehab and you've been on drugs or alcohol, it's hard to get a job, sometimes hard to find a place to live. Great mission. She was going to do it for women getting out of jail, because when you've been incarcerated, it's really hard to get a job and it's really hard to get a place to live. So that's great. Third one was she was going to use it for women who were leaving domestic violence situations with their kids. I questioned her a little bit on that one, because I said, while it's very needed, don't get me wrong, I'm not talking badly about your hopes and your dreams, but unfortunately, if I were leaving a domestic violence situation and towing some kids, I'm hoping for these other women who are getting out of jail and who are getting off drugs, but I don't know if I want my kids around that. You know what I mean? So anyway, all that to say, I questioned her about that, but I go, okay, bottom line though, people who've been done drugs, if they fall back in, people who've been involved in crime, who might have an issue with that, or with an angry spouse, angry boyfriend, angry whatever coming after you. You probably need a lot of security, and for 100 rooms, that's a lot of utilities. You're going to have a lot of employees, 24-hour employees, I'm sure. So I said, how are you going to pay for this? And she looked at me right in the eye. I'm going to look right in the screen right now. She looked at me right in the eye and she said, bake sales. And I said, what? She said, bake sales. And I was like, how are you going to do that? I mean, that's a buttload of cookies right there. I said, my wife and I, and this is a true story, my wife and I actually had a gourmet cookie company. And what we do is we bake and we give the proceeds to charity after we covered our costs. And I was like, our best month ever was $10,000 profit. I go, how are you going to make a ton of money enough to support your business? There's a phrase, and if you do anything with church or anything like that, there's a common phrase that says the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And that's what this case was. This woman was a wonderful woman. She had a wonderful idea. She wanted to help and make, the world a better place. And it was poorly planned. It was not thought out. It was, I woke up one day and said, I want to help people and I want to do a nonprofit. It wasn't a business plan. It wasn't a resource development plan. It wasn't anything. And the ultimate thing that you got to remember about that, and by the way, her follow-up was, you can apply to Bill and Melinda Gates. It was her quote at the very beginning. She said, you can apply to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for me. And I said, no, I can't. Because Bill and Melinda Gates are curing AIDS and polio for continents. Not that a women's shelter in Dallas, very important. That's very needed. I live in Dallas. I know it's important, but that's not what Bill and Melinda Gates do. But that was her plan. So you can't go into this just willy-nilly and just think, oh, I'm a 501c3 now. I get grants. You know what I mean? So in that regard, it's kind of important that you remember that. So what are my takeaways? What can you do? Educate your board. Let them know the process that it takes to do this. Plan. Have a grant calendar and know that you're applying for stuff in January. Be selective. Don't go after everything you see. It's not spaghetti sticking to the wall. Assert your expertise. I put that in yesterday because Dr. Bev Browning said that. You're the expert. Put it in there. Know your limits. Don't stretch yourself. Diversify. That's actually stuff together. Make sure you have everything ready to apply. Engage the board. You got to let them know that this isn't just, oh, we have a grant writer. They didn't write $1 million worth of grants, so our nonprofit's going to fail because they suck. No. Do you have everything ready? Do you have everything? I mean, and here's a real part of this. This is the other real true life story I have for you guys. Hold on, I think there you go. Put yourself in a position to succeed. My real life story is on the next one. The real life story is that I lost a customer because they gave me a budget, and their budget, honest to God truth, their budget said income $1 million, expenses $950,000, net $50,000. They didn't show salaries, and any of us who do grants know that you want your executive salaries to be 17% or less, probably closer to 14.5%. Anybody knows who does grants, you want your fundraising expenses to be 10% or less. Didn't have any of that. And so I helped her put her budget in order so she had a real budget. They didn't have meetings. They didn't have minutes. They didn't show that the board voted to approve this or not approve it. It was basically her doing her thing of whatever she wanted to and money that came in. Now, she was following her mission. She was serving, this is for veterans. She was serving veterans, but she was not ready at all to receive any kind of grants. It was kind of frustrating because after 1 month, she fired me because I didn't get any grants for her. I was like, I didn't even have anything from you to turn in. We didn't have the ability to apply for grants. You didn't have the numbers yet. You didn't, so you've got to take that time to educate people on what grants are and what they're not. Now, again, grants are great, but you probably want them to be a little bit more on the complementary side of things, and how you can make a difference first by being established, by showing good numbers, by engaging the community. That makes you more attracted to grantors than just say, hey, we have a good mission. You know, again, because like I said a long time ago, you have a good mission and they have a good mission, and so do they, and they, and they. And it just becomes, why should we invest in you? You know, I always say that foundations are a lot like Shark Tank. And if you ever watch Shark Tank, and Mark Cuban always goes, show me the numbers. Oh, well, we've done three kids this month, but we're going to have more connect. You're in development still. And that's what they'll say. So that's kind of my idea. Grants are not bad, obviously. If you need me for anything, that's me. I have a blog that's on nonprofitknowledge.org. If you ever want to do a grant readiness test, I have a grant readiness test. Oh, and yes, by the way, that last picture right there is Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys signing my back. I also have a rookie coaching venture. So if you have rookies out there that needs of, it's kind of like a coach. I'm a certified coach, so it's kind of a coaching kind of thing, but it's a coaching venture. The nonprofit masterminds. That's what actually I was doing with Sabrina with this along upon her passing. So aside from that, let me stop sharing my screen and see if anybody has any questions. Where is the chat? There is the chat. Let's see. Anybody have any questions? Was I helpful? I hope I was helpful. Despite and I apologize for my few technical difficulties when I first got started and jumping over to having to jump over to between the two being the admin. But are there any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
Yeah.
I didn't know, and I've been doing this for a while, that the executive director salary needed to be between 14 and 17%.
Yes.
So that was interesting.
Yes. That's general. And I'll tell you this, I can tell you this. I was doing hold on, let me here. I was actually my dad was a Charger. So Kenneth, you can Dallas Cowboy me all you want. I'm not from here. My dad played for the San Diego Chargers, so I still root for them. But anyway, I was a scorer, Debbie, and I would get a stack of grants. And the very first thing that we would do is we would calculate out what the admin costs were. And if they were over 17%, we put them in another pile. Now, that didn't mean they were disqualified, but we were going to take the people lower than that first. Now, again, I will tell you this one more time. Same situation as when I was talking about your grant success rate. That's a dumb number, in my opinion, because, you know, if I had the chance to, I mean, you don't want to say our budget's $1 million and my CEO is getting paid $900,000. I get that, because then money's not going to the programming, or to the mission, I should say. But if I had the opportunity to hire, if my average salary, let's say I was paying somebody $100,000 and I got like Oprah Winfrey or Steve Jobs or somebody who's just brilliant that everybody knew that was a go-getter, and they said, I wanted 150, I want 200,000. To me, it's worth it, because you're going to get those people who are innovative, who believe in your mission, who want you to grow. And that might break, then in that case, then maybe your first thing you do is, I'm not going to get the money. Oh, we're about to get bounced, I think. But breakout rooms will close in 57 seconds. But so yeah, but it's the two things that you look at are 17% max on ad. And by the way, that's just admin. That's how people start going, well, what percentage of the admin is electricity? If the admin didn't come in, if I'm the CEO and I didn't come in that day, the electricity is still going to be on. The air conditioning is still going to run. You know what I mean? The insurance is still going to have to be paid. It's just the salary, the benefits, and anything direct. Like if I had an assistant, those kind of things. So, and we got one more quick question. See if I can answer it real fast. Oh, thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome. Despite the problems, I'll be in yours. I think I'm doing rooms 1 and 3, so I'll be introducing you later on today. So, anyway, well, thank you everybody, and I will see you back in the main room.